Maybe we can just start off. Just tell me your name and your age, and like I had said, anything that you think might be just relevant bits of information about you as it relates to your float practice.
Okay. Yeah, so my name's Zach Turnure. I'm 22 years old. I'm currently an MBA student at Lindenwood University, and I would say as far as my experiences so far in TAP with the floating kind of traces back to my football career at Ohio State, because our strength coaches, our training staff, they had a huge focal point on recovery. And a lot of places you see, the demand of what you're doing on the field, in the film room, not many people take a big focus on that, on the recovery aspect of things. So it was good to be in an environment where we were doing recovery just as much as we were doing anything football related. So just this past year, within my last year of playing there, once the floating became more popular, our program actually purchased a float pod. And so that's pretty much where my first few experiences trace back to, is experiencing that through the football recovery, and whether physically, mental, just both types of aspects of recovery really helped when floating and whatnot. So that's really where I got in touch with floating my first time.
So Ohio State University, just in the past year or a couple of years, purchased and installed a float device?
Yeah, our football program just this past year did install and purchase one that we have in our training room that we use.
Okay. And prior to that, you hadn't floated, or you hadn't heard about floating?
Right, yeah. I actually, kind of at the same time, it's ironic, kind of the same time when that all was happening, my dad had actually went to your location in Midtown for the first time. And after that, he was like, he told me about his experience, and I'm like, no way, like, we're doing it too. So he was like, oh, whenever you're back town in St. Louis, like, we got to get you there, and you got to, like, see how it is and see if you like it. So it's kind of at the same time those two things happened. So that correlation was kind of neat to happen at the same time.
And while you were at Ohio State, how was the float being used? Like, what was the frequency? What was the purpose? And how was it being talked about to you guys?
Yeah, so as far as how it was being talked to us, it was really, it kind of just tapped into all the aspects of recovery, as far as, because with a lot of things, especially with a physical sport, you're doing a lot of like physical recovery, stuff that's helping your body and whatnot. But I think the other side of what's cool with the float pod is it really taps into the mental and physical side of things, and both aspects of that side of recovery. So that's really how it was preached to us. Not only were we floating for as far as physical recovery, it was also helping us with all the demands mentally of school, of football, of everything, and really just getting in that extra relaxation with that heavy demand of what we had going on a day-to-day basis. So that's really how it was preached to us.
Yeah, because you hear about that. The demands of the athletic performance on top of the demands of being a collegiate, scholastic athlete. Right? And excelling in your academics at the same time as you're trying to excel as being this elite athlete.
Absolutely.
That's very demanding. And then on top of that, we're talking 18 to 21 year olds.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And then there's social aspects of life. All of these different things that are really important.
Oh yeah.
And so for you specifically, what did it feel like the float did for you?
Yeah, so as far as my experience, it was interesting. When the first time I ever did it, it was kind of one of those things. I feel like with anybody, it's foreign to you. You're naive about the process. So I really didn't know what to expect going into it. And my first time floating, you're kind of like tensed up. You really don't know what to expect, how you should feel. You're kind of just like thinking too much about it instead of just what you're supposed to be doing, just laying down and relaxing and just clearing your mind. But yeah, as I started to do it more, my learning experience with it enhanced, and I was able to relax more each and every time I did it. I was able to learn more about it, and I think each time I did it, I became more relaxed and more in touch with what I was actually getting out of it.
And how, from that first time that you floated to now, that's been over the course of what?
Probably 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
How many times do you think you've floated at this point?
At this point, maybe probably close to 40, 50 times.
40, 50 times.
Yeah.
Wow. And what's that been like? From I don't know what this is. I'm not really sure how I'm doing this, to, I think you said at some point you were floating at Ohio State, like pretty every few days?
During the training, yeah.
What are your floats like now compared to what they were like, 2 years ago?
Yeah, so it kind of started out where I only did it a few times, and then whenever I was actually playing at Ohio State, I only still was able to do it a few times just because of the schedule.
Okay.
And then when I got to the point where I was training for Pro Day, like training for the NFL, that's when I had more time, where I was just focusing on training and just a few classes, so I had more time. And when I was in there training, there wasn't many people in there. It was just our strength and training staff. All the players were gone for the most part while me and some of the guys were training, and that allowed me to really do it more. And that was great, because the more I did it, like I said, I was able to really just get more and more relaxed and in tune with my experience, and it just got more positive as I progressed. So then that period kind of transitioned into now, which is where I'm trying to go frequently. Definitely not as much as I did then, but yeah, I try to go frequently as of now, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is it helping you in ways outside of football, strength and conditioning? You're not training as hard as you did then. Now you're a full-time MBA student, right? I imagine you're still training in some capacities.
Oh yeah.
What's your float practice like now? How is it helping you?
I think before I really viewed it kind of as like, oh wow, this is like a physical thing, like because my body was so, just stressed to the point beyond belief with all the demands of football and the training. And I really viewed it more so as the physical aspect of, okay, it's relaxing my muscles, it's helping recovery as far as, like I said, the muscle aspect of things. But then once I started to kind of progress out of football, I viewed it more as like, wow, it's really helping me mentally as well. Like that whole experience when you come in, it's very relaxed. The whole pre-process before floating is great that you guys do. And then the post-process is great as well, along with the floating itself. So I think that whole process really taps into the whole like mental aspect of things and really helps relaxation in that aspect. So that really helps a lot.
And before you're floating at Ohio State, now you're floating at home. And when we saw each other last year in there with your dad, what's it like, floating with your dad? Like you guys show up together, you each get into your own individual device, you come out at the same time. What encompasses the whole, my dad and I are going to go have a float experience? What's it like?
I think it's cool because we both love it, and we both have different experiences with it, and we're able to kind of talk to each other about that. Like I'm able to kind of correlate to how I think of it and how my experience is, along with what he experiences as well. So I think that's great too. And like I said, we both just really enjoy it for what it is, and being able to kind of talk about it and just enjoy that relaxed environment as well together. It's kind of like just a piece away from the busy day to day that everyone has. So it's cool to do that with my dad. Yeah.
And you talked about, again, floating at Ohio State, which I imagine was somewhat more of a simple experience, maybe.
Right.
It was more physical focused, and there wasn't maybe as much ritual or ceremony around the process.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to be having your floats like that, and then to come in and kind of have the supported Float STL experience? I've never had the Ohio State float, so I'm just curious.
At Ohio State, it was definitely more, obviously, since there's so many guys on the team, and just trying to fit everything in with how busy things are between practice and stuff. It was definitely more of like something that was, I wouldn't say rushed, but it was like there was no really focus on the pre and post aspects of it. We didn't have, like, we didn't like relax really before it as we had done it at Float STL, and I think that's huge. Like the whole pre and post aspect was what was really different, and it really just added to the experience as a whole, because before it was kind of just like focused on the floating, but then here at Float STL it's like the whole experience, the pre, the post, how you're feeling when you go in, how you're feeling when you leave. So I think that encompassed as a whole is really what's great about FLOAT STL.
Mm-hmm. And when you were floating at Ohio State, was it pretty widely adopted across the whole team? I mean, were people self-selecting on who was and who wasn't floating? Were there guys that said, I'm just not floating, I'm not doing that? Or was like everybody on board?
It was somewhat of, if you're interested in it, and then somewhat of they encouraged it. So like guys who were really like, because they track everything. They have like technology that I know, like I think the military uses, that they use to track like the amount of input on your body, and like what exactly down to the numbers is the strain happening to your body. So like they figure out like to the number of how overworked or underworked people are, and they use that technology to kind of relay, okay, what amount of recovery do those individuals need? So they do a lot of calculation stuff, and so those guys who are definitely like at a high demand physically and mentally especially, they definitely were encouraged to use the float tank. And then obviously guys too, out of interest, if they wanted to do it, they could try to do it. But I would say more so is for the individuals who are like really, really worked. So that's kind of who the people were that were encouraged to do it. And then they still had the choice of whether or not they wanted to, but our strength staff and our training staff really encouraged it.
Okay. So it's a pretty high-tech sports medicine culture there.
Oh yeah, big time.
Using whatever is at the forefront of technology.
Yeah, I think the one system's called like a Zephyr system, and it literally is able to tell like how much you're sweating, how much like weight you're losing just in that amount of exercise, how much you're exerting, like an exact percentage that you're exerting in that moment of training or that moment of a practice. So yeah, they're able to like use all those numbers to help aid what type of recovery certain guys need. So I mean, it's really great that they do that, and that's really why it was awesome that they got the float tank, because they were able to kind of tap that in with the recovery process of the floating. So it was great. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What would you say to like there's a number of collegiate athletes in the local area, or I mean just in general, floating is becoming more and more known, and you hear more and more athletes talk about using floating to help with performance and recovery. What would you say maybe to athletes who are aware of it but aren't yet open or haven't yet tried it?
Right.
What would you say to them?
Yeah, for them, for me, I believe life in general, everything's a learning experience, and I always like to try new things. And I know specifically for athletes, it is a very, very awesome recovery tool, and I would encourage anybody to at least give it a try, because you really don't know what to expect. It's like I said, when my first experience, I was naive to it. I was foreign to the whole process, so I didn't know what to expect. But once I tried it, I was like, wow, I really like this. Like, even though I may have not really known what I was doing at first or knew how to get myself totally relaxed to enjoy it fully, after that first experience, I was just like, okay, I want to keep doing this. I want to get more in tap with how this can help me and how it can aid in my recovery process. So for any athlete, I would definitely say 100% give it a try. And then even if they're on the fence after that first try, to continue trying it and seeing how kind of their experience will progress over multiple times of doing it. Because like I said, that's kind of how my experience went. I really enjoyed my first time floating, and then from there I was just kind of wanting to enhance it as I move forward, enhance my experience, keep on going, and keep learning more that I could. So yeah, I would definitely encourage them to give it a try no matter what.
And you played not just football, but you also played lacrosse?
Yeah.
Okay, so you played lacrosse and football in high school?
Yeah, I played both in high school, went to Ohio State to play lacrosse on scholarship, then stopped playing lacrosse, joined the football team as a walk-on, then got a scholarship for football. So,
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the walk-on aspect of Ohio State, because that's a big deal. I mean, people don't just walk on to Ohio State football, right?
Yeah,
they have quite a recruitment program, I imagine.
Exactly. Yeah, so when I knew that I wanted to make that transition, I was in that process, as any normal kid would. And I was like, do I want to transfer? Do I want to try to play here? I really didn't kind of know what to do, but I knew I loved Ohio State. And I'm like, I really don't want to leave here. And so I just kind of had the idea. I'm like, I'm going to just join the team here. Like, why not? I'm going to give it a shot. And so actually we had a kid from my high school, CBC, here in St. Louis, and he was getting recruited by Ohio State. So that's kind of how my coach had a contact with their team. And I got in touch with that coach and told him about myself and just told him my interest of walking on. And it just kind of went from there. And then they offered me a spot on the team, and then started out rough, obviously, because you're coming in as a new face. No one knows who you are. No coaches know who you are. It's definitely tough at first, and then a lot of adversity to overcome. And as I kind of progressed, it really just became one of the most life-changing experiences for me. I mean, I learned so many things about myself as far as overcoming adversity, how to handle tough situations, and especially when you're backed up against the wall, like overcoming those really tough times. I mean, that taught me a lot about myself. And then especially just kind of catching the eye of some of those high caliber coaches like Coach Meyer, and then eventually getting a scholarship. It was just like, wow, this whole grind up to this point was really worth it.
Wow.
And it was just one of the most fulfilling experiences, I would say, especially being at such a low point, and then to come out on top was just incredible.
Wow. Oh, what position did you play?
Yeah, so I played linebacker, and then I switched to fullback my last year. Okay. So I played a little bit of fullback, and then I did mostly special teams and whatnot, like kickoff return, punt block, all those things. So that was kind of like really where I was able to develop, was on special teams. And my last year, I actually led the team in tackles on those units, so that was really exciting. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun, especially that kickoff running down, especially even against teams like Penn State, where Saquon Barkley, the first overall draft pick, I mean, he was their kick returner, and just running down and being able to like make a play on someone of that caliber was just amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you went from walk-on to tackling guys like that.
Yeah.
And awarded a scholarship?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was unbelievable experience.
What year did you were you awarded the scholarship?
In going into my last season.
Okay.
Coach Meyer we have like end of the year meetings, and after my third year in the program, he talked to me about that he was basically hinting at like, I kind of want to give you a scholarship, and you got to do like this and this, as far as like you got to make sure you're graduating on time. There's like little logistical things that you got to make sure you get right so that we can give you the scholarship. So I was kind of in a period of figuring all that out, and I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to get it or not. And then he announced it to the team going into that fall camp, going into that last season. So me and one other guy, he offered scholarships too, and it was just amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really great.
It was awesome.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then you talked about, going forward, you want to get into sports management.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of your interest in doing the MBA.
Absolutely.
Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so really I really got in touch with that industry. I knew I had an interest of doing something with the guys, just because, I mean, I love being around those guys all the time, even like being teammates, just being around such a diverse group of guys. I mean, it was just, the experience was amazing. I love those guys so much, and I wanted to get in touch with something that could like help them out, whether that something mentorship wise, I didn't really know. And then I actually came across a book, Lee Steinberg. He's a really influential, really good agent, and he has a great book. And I read his book, and once I read that, it was like, wow, this is it. Like, this is really what I want to do. And I just kept building off that and trying to build relationships in the industry to learn what I could. And then I knew because you have to get certified as an agent, and that required either an MBA or a law degree, depending on where your interest lies. So then I decided to take the MBA route. So if I want to, I can get the certification next summer once I finish my degree in May. So I'll be thinking logistically what I want to do and whatnot, but that's kind of the angle I want to take. And that really is just what got me in touch with it, is just being around those guys, hearing exactly what their interests were as they transitioned from college to the NFL, what they needed, things that they wish they could have had, and things like that. So hearing kind of all those things was like, it kind of hit me. I'm like, wow, I could help out in that way, in that aspect. So that's kind of what drew me to that. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but that's kind of the angle that I'm thinking about taking.
Cool. And you've done 50 floats. You've gone from collegiate to the pro day to MBA, looking forward to sports management. Is there something that you're excited about or looking forward to in your float practice as you anticipate the next year or 2 years? I mean, continuing, like, what are you looking forward to? What do you expect is going to happen?
Well, the way I like to view it is it's funny. It kind of goes back to that experience with me and my dad. I'm like, he's like at a different level than I am, just as far as his experience and what he experiences out of it. And I see that, and then I see even how other guys experience it. And I really kind of just want to progress and just keep learning and learning and learning, because there's so many. It seems like such a simple process, yet I feel like it's so complex. Like there's so many things that you can learn, techniques beforehand, after, that you can use that can truly enhance that experience. So I would say moving forward, I really want to find out that process where I can get 100% out of my float and my whole experience. So that's really what I want to focus on.
What do you think is something, not just specifically for the athletes, but just, people in general, whether they're students or they're other people that you come into contact with, what would you say to them if they're like, yeah, I don't know if that's for me, or I'm not sure, it sounds kind of weird, or something like that? What would you say to those people?
I would say to them that you can't make any of those statements until you do it. That's probably the biggest thing I would say. You can't assume what you're going to get out of it. You can't assume what it might do for you. You really just don't know until you do it. So for those people that are on the fence, I mean, they just really have to give it a try. And there's really no loss. I mean, there's nothing bad that can happen. There's nothing negative that's going to happen. If anything, it's going to either be something that they are still on the fence about, or they'll experience something great. So either way, there's no negative that can come of it. So I see it all as positive. So I would say just anybody give it a try.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time, Zach.
Oh, yeah.
This was a lot of fun.
No problem.
It's nice to get your perspective on it.